Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, October 21st, 2021. My name is Emma Vigeland, and for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Rupa Marya, co-author of Inflamed, Deep Medicine, and the Anatomy of Injustice. Meanwhile, reports of increased frustration with cinema increase as the Biden administration reportedly plans to isolate her after her opposition to raising taxes on corporations and the wealthy remains steadfast. So, Republican representation in the Democratic Party matters. And in Manchin land, a report says that he's considering leaving the Democratic Party, which Manchin later denied, after likely leaking that information as a way to say, these negotiations better go my way or else. So let's not take that threat too seriously. I mean, how could he get all the attention that he craves if he's in the GOP? Third time's the charm on voting legislation? Not so much. For the third time, Republicans in the Senate have blocked voting rights. A voting rights bill, this time an even further watered down version. So, newsflash, they'll block it all. Filibuster reform now. The FDA has authorized booster shots for Moderna and J&J COVID vaccines for more vulnerable populations, and has also greenlit mixing and matching booster shots, which could provide better immunity, particularly for the J&J recipients. And the White House is anticipating the approval of the Pfizer vaccine for children ages 5 to 11 shortly, this time with smaller doses and needles, and through pediatricians, not pharmacies and shot sites. And a reminder that global vaccine inequity remains a massive issue, and vaccine intellectual property still needs to be waived. And lastly, Bolivian authorities claim to have connected the mercenaries behind the successful assassination, if you want to call it that, geez, of Haitian, apparently I just did, of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse to an attempt on leftist presidential candidate Luis Arce's life. The plot thickens in that story. All this and more on today's program. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Sam is out on Thursday, as he is every Thursday these days, and I'm here to guide you through this day in news. On the reconciliation front, not much has changed. Not much has changed, although reports are saying that Biden is taking an increased role in negotiations, which begs the question, why was his role not more prominent early on?
Yeah, now that we're at about half the $3.5 trillion, he's decided to get involved. Thanks, Sleepy Joe.
He was a little bit worried about the bill falling apart entirely, I'd imagine. And my guess is he had some internal number within the administration where if it dipped below that, then he would get involved, or if it threatened some of the things that he actually cares about. But the reality is that if they had gotten out in front of this a while ago, if there were coordinated campaigns against these psychos, Manchin and Sinema, then potentially we would have been able to avoid some of these things. But right now, they're running the show. And so it's a bit past due that Biden get involved at the 11th hour. So we're going to take a bit of a turn and talk a little bit about the confirmation hearings for Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, former notorious member of the Obama administration who was virulently against the more leftist members of the Democratic Party pushing for single-payer health care.
Pro-finance, anti-left.
Yeah, one of the most reprehensible members of the Democratic Party, but because he has lent his support to Biden and the ilk that surround Joe Biden, they have to reward him because politics are transactional for some reason.
This Rahm is indicative of a lot of Democrats in leadership, frankly.
Yes, but he's a particularly villainous flavor and much more public about it. And of course, he was the mayor of Chicago, and so he made a lot of decisions there, which should be coming up more aggressively in these hearings. But unfortunately for us, Tim Kaine is in the membrane. Tim Kaine's in the brain. And Matt may sing at some point.
Tim Kaine,
no!
Kaine in the membrane. Tim Kaine in the brain.
It's a drop now.
Every muscle in my body is like atrophying or it's in. Ugh.
Watch Hillary examine the terrain. Watch her campaign with her man Tim Kaine.
No. No. Anyway, thanks. Here is Tim Kaine speaking to Rahm Emanuel in his confirmation hearings to be U.S. ambassador to Japan, and what Tim Kaine chose to do here. Rahm Emanuel, of course, of the same kind of group that Tim Kaine is in the Democratic Party, which is why Hillary Clinton selected him to be her vice president. Didn't work out so well. Here he is running interference for Emanuel, who helped cover up the murder of then 17-year-old Laquan McDonald at the hands of Chicago police. And to add an extra layer to this story and how reprehensible it is that this man is continuing to get legitimacy in the Democratic Party and in power, these hearings yesterday were 7 years to the day after that white city police officer murdered Laquan McDonald. And Rahm Emanuel didn't release body cam footage of that murder, despite repeated protests and calls, for 400 days as he tried to cover up what happened. But here's how Tim Kaine frames that in the midst of confirmation hearings.
Mr. McDonald, because what a tragedy. And I was a mayor, and every day in cities, beautiful things happen and tragic things happen. And that's the case in any city, and you can't be a mayor, especially of a city like Chicago, without picking up some scar tissue on the way. But your description of what you learned along the way, that the levels of distrust that some in communities feel toward people in power, toward politicians, toward police, I had to learn and then relearn those lessons often in my time as the mayor of a majority African-American city. And I'm sure...
The problem is the distrust they feel, or the reason they feel the distrust.
Yeah.
Why I'd be where I would draw that concern.
Right. Well, no, the distrust is earned for everybody else, but for me, you know, I have to just deal with it.
I didn't realize how much you people distrust the cops after they killed people.
It's so weird.
Suppress the evidence.
But a pretty good example of the cognitive dissonance that some of these more right-wing Democrats have when it comes to their own role in systemic racism.
And it's a wish. It's a wish that people trusted the cops so much that they could just get away with stuff like that.
Right. Do we have a little bit more of that? Yeah. Okay.
And Chicago is a much bigger city than Richmond, Virginia. Those lessons were challenging and painful for you during your entire tenure, but you served in an admirable way. I want to just ask you.
It was challenging and painful for Rahm Emanuel, I'm sure, as he raked in all that cash and he gentrified the entire city and he backed up the police force with complete fealty. So, like, that's not a ringing endorsement, Tim Kaine, that basically he had scar tissue that he should be able to get away with for some reason. Because
look into Tim Kaine's history, honestly.
Yeah, exactly, right? The fact that he sees himself in this situation. Officer Jason Van Dyke fired his weapon 16 times at Laquan McDonald in 2014. October 20th, as I mentioned yesterday, was 7 years to the day. It took 400 days for Rahm Emanuel to release that body cam footage after activists took to the streets countless times. Not only that, the city of Chicago forced the McDonald family to sign an NDA in order to even see the dash cam footage, the body cam footage I forget which one it was, I'm sorry, of his murder, which means that Rahm Emanuel's defense of this was like, I didn't see it before. If you guys didn't see, if you weren't aware of this footage, why were you so concerned enough that you made his family sign an NDA in order for them to see the footage and make a case against the Chicago Police Department? And it's not like the ambassador to Japan is some massive position, right? Like, I'm not worried about what Rahm Emanuel is going to do in Japan, even though, oddly, he's coming out and saying, I'm going to use this to pressure China. Very nice. Thank you. We can use you as the cog in the in the Cold War consensus that the Biden administration and Chuck Schumer and the Republicans in particular are trying to pursue. It's not that. It's the fact that he's been given this legitimacy and continues to be so, to get this legitimacy because he has connections and fundraising ability and money and power in the Democratic Party. If the Democrats want to say that Black Lives Matter and they want to use that for fundraising, do not give people like this, at the bare minimum, more legitimacy and more power, right? Of course, they're not going to reform the filibuster for police reform. They're just going to let voting rights and police accountability go by the wayside in that area. So I've already given up on that for the moment. But at the very least, you don't need to reward individuals like this, and yet they're doing it anyway. So what is their commitment to racial justice and holding police accountable in this country? Because they're not showing it except for kneeling in kente cloth. And I'm sick. I'm sick of the falseness of it.
No, this is why it's good that we actually see what they do when they have the ability to exercise power, because all that stuff is just marketing for campaigns. They don't have any commitment to it. They have commitment to people like Rahm Emanuel, who acted in a way that, frankly, a lot of them would have acted if they were mayor of Chicago, and they frankly recognize that.
We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will be joined by Rupa Marya, Associate Professor of Medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, and co-author of Inflamed, Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice. We will be right back. We are back, and we are joined on the road with Rupa Marya, Associate Professor of Medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, and co-author of Inflamed, Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice. Rupa, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I'm sitting outside my hospital. This was the best place to be unmasked with you today.
I appreciate that. So thank you for your flexibility here. And I can't wait to talk about your book because there's so much there. And you really deal with and grapple with these large questions about the social roots of poor health, and particularly the capitalist and colonial roots of that, which it's not a conversation that is had generally in the United States, and it's especially at all, and it's especially relevant in the midst of COVID because we're dealing with these kinds of pathogens that come from different species and climate change that stems from it as well. So I guess let's start with the current pandemic that we're dealing with. How does what we're currently all experiencing fit into your larger thesis?
So what we're looking at in the book, Raj Patel and I, is we are looking at how the roots of the problems that we're seeing, not just with COVID, which is in its worst form, an inflammatory experience, but all the diseases I treat in the hospital as a physician at UCSF, from cardiovascular disease to cancer to Alzheimer's to diabetes, all of these diseases that are the hallmark of modern industrialized societies are diseases where chronic inflammation is playing a major role in the development and the expression of these diseases. And what we now understand is that inflammation is the body's response to damage or the threat of damage. And this damage can come from things that seem as innocuous as student debt. It can come from things like racist police violence or intergenerational trauma. Or having to work the night shift, not having autonomy in your workspace. So these kinds of damages affect our body in ways that drive inflammatory disease. And in order to have a difference in health outcomes, we have to start restructuring the society around us so that the body can stop being in this state of chronic inflammation. And we see it disproportionately, these diseases disproportionately impact Black, Brown, Indigenous people, but also the working class. And so what COVID is showing us is what we've known for a long time, is that capitalism, and especially the combination of colonialism and capitalism, have really driven the onset of these and the expansion of these diseases.
So, I mean, you mentioned the racial disparities and the divisions in the way that COVID infections and deaths and illness has manifested itself, and often in the news they'll talk about those disparities, but not the underlying reason for that, which is inextricably connected to class and the coercion of returning to work in many instances in the midst of this pandemic. Talk a little bit about how that revealed itself in the past 2 years.
Well, you can see it, in the midst of the Delta surge here in California. We were watching as families were being cattle prodded to send their children back to school when we had wildfires. And the strategy to keep the children safe, unvaccinated children, was to open up windows and to ventilate and for masking. And unfortunately, that's not possible when the AQI, the air quality index in the Bay Area, has been up to 250 or unhealthy or hazardous for human health, especially children who breathe more. And so the coinciding crises of climate change and the pandemic really show us how we need to have systems level analysis of what's happening and systems level solutions. So masking and vaccination are important, but they won't get at what's driving the underlying disease spread. And that is the desperation of the working class, and also the desperation that has been manufactured in our society for Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. And so when we understand that these expressions of disease are actually a very natural reaction to those structures, then we can start to really address things upstream and say, okay, well, if we want different outcomes, let's get different structures.
Right. And so I want to return to that concept of inflammation because, of course, it's so important to your book as both a way to look at our bodies and how they're reacting to the world and how that's disproportionate along a lot of those lines that you mentioned, but also as a metaphor for our world system and capitalism as constructed and in general, and the colonial shades of that, and how that's what that system is going through or undergoing right now in inflammation. Take us through the connectivity. Yeah.
Yes. So these things are related, and how medicine fails, as Western medicine, how it fails is it doesn't understand the relationships between these things, and that these relationships have been invisibilized for centuries. So what we practice right now, by treating individuals, by not understanding how these things are related, it makes us actually ineffective at addressing the rising rates of diabetes and cancer. I just saw a 34-year-old woman with widely spread colon cancer, and this has become increasingly common in my 20 years of practicing medicine. So the mindset that led to the colonization of this land, which separated people from nature, which separated, white folks from other folks, which separated, enforce these false dichotomies of mind and body, this Cartesian Enlightenment era errors that we're still living with, are a part of what was needed to colonize other people's lands and extract the wealth and labor from those lands, in order to, benefit the European overlords at that time. And the overlords have changed. So in India, you have, different overlords, but the colonial structures are still in place. So that is not really a liberated society, you could say, or nation. And so,
yeah. Oh, go on.
Yeah, sorry. And so that these structures that were advanced 600 years ago created a severance of people from the web of life and from everything that keeps us healthy. And so the cause of climate change is the same kind of cause that we're seeing in these inflammatory diseases. I mean, it is not a metaphor when you look at how we farm under capitalist society with these industrial farming techniques that literally expose the soil to more, oxidation of the soil and eating up a stable carbon in the soil. The soil is literally inflamed. So it's important to understand these biological processes are the body's natural way to respond to damage. And so it's not like our bodies are out, they're responding incorrectly. They're responding correctly to damage. So if we want it to stop, we have to stop the damage. And that is literally transforming our world. It's time to transform the way our society is structured.
Yeah, so I guess we can talk a little bit about that underlying structure, and capitalism and colonialism in general, and how, as currently envisioned and structured, and I just think maybe it's just inextricable, the systems of colonialism and capitalism as ways to serve the West/global North. How has that produced the inflammation that you describe?
Well, when this land was colonized several hundred years ago, it was militaries, missionaries, and medics who did that work. And so it's not a surprise then when we look at, why are there such health disparities between white and Black women, let's say, in maternity outcomes? Well, this is part of the structure of how medicine was set up in these places. And the entire architecture of medicine is set up in that way. So in order to, when that medicine is also then driven through capitalist aims, like right now in California, the COVID response has been really guided by healthcare executive lobbyists instead of our frontline nurses and doctors. Things that we wished we had this whole time, we still don't have in the ways that we want, because the workers are not determining our policy. It's these healthcare executive lobbyists. And these healthcare systems are making record profits at a time when our nurses are in trash bags, just trying to, get through this pandemic safely. And so if we valued worker safety, if we valued patient safety, if we valued children's safety, we would be emphasizing the agendas of those carers, of the people who are doing the care. If we valued farmer or farm worker safety, so the very people who are critical to the functioning of our society have not been setting the agenda on how things happen with this pandemic. And that is this sort of top-down structure of a colonial architecture, of a capitalist colonial architecture. And it just shows that then the brunt of the suffering will constantly be upon those workers, upon those people. And that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable for our children to be carrying this risk. It's unacceptable for doctors and nurses to be getting sick and dying from COVID. And so that's really this moment in history is a great time to focus in on why are things the way they are. We talk about structural determinants of health, but we do not talk about how those structures came to be. And that's what we do in this book, in our book, Inflamed.
Right. I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but like one of the starkest examples of what I've seen in the pandemic is just like the shortages and the reporting on the shortages of hospital beds or ventilators, and there's the reporting on what's happening, but the underlying system there is that these for-profit hospitals deliberately cut the number of beds because they want to make the profits more efficient. They want to be more efficient and make money, and empty beds like that's burning cash, right?
Exactly. It's the same concept of like you pay your firefighters to be ready for when there's a fire. So many hospitals have closed in rural communities because of this capitalist consolidation. It's a terrible idea to have those values running your healthcare system, which is why we're pushing for AB 1400 in California to get single payer, to get private health insurance out of California, so that we can be done with the financial abuse, both doctors and patients and nurses. We could be done with the financial abuse that we're living through. And then understanding that financial abuse, the medical debt that most Americans carry, is a part of what's driving our inflammation. Debt itself is an independent cause of inflammatory disease. And so if you eliminated debt in, for example, like payday loans in the United States, if you eliminated this toxic financial tool, you would directly improve health outcomes. And so that is, we saw it with the public smoking ban. It took 20 years to fight the tobacco industry to get one public smoking ban. And it's had tremendous impacts on lowering the rates of fatal heart attacks and strokes. And so that is what we need to be doing on a societal level.
Right. So, I mean, you're all right? Okay.
It's the parking police in San Francisco.
I gotcha. So the concept of kind of atomizing these different concepts and sectioning off sectioning off elements of or the manifestation of harm or inflammation from those larger concepts. You write about how it's like modern or Western healthcare that's kind of individualized healthcare in and of itself. And so I think that's indicative of a lot of larger problems that we see in capitalism. The extracting these like separate little examples of it from the whole. I'm just wondering if you could expand on how that reveals itself in medicine in the United States and in the West in particular.
Yes, so this whole concept of individual health is something that we really challenge in this book, that atomization of individuals, the focus on individuals for blaming them for their illness or looking to them for their own healing is part of the legacy of separating us from one another and from the web of life that is critical for supporting our health. And so what we discuss in our book is that health is actually an emergent phenomenon of systems working well within systems. And so that is that we can't actually look to be healthy if we've ignored an aspect of the system. For example, we can't hope to vaccinate the global north and leave the global south behind and not expect a variant to come and bite us in the butt, which is exactly what happened. And so it is a critical time to look at how capitalism has organized our understanding of our bodies and ourselves and our world around us, and how it is to our detriment that we follow that cosmology and mentality, and that there are much richer and better cosmologies already out there that support greater biodiversity and consequently greater health. And we see that with indigenous communities who are living with their traditions intact. For example, the Yanomami and the Amazon, they have the greatest biodiversity inside their body through their gut microbiome. And we know that the gut microbiome protects against inflammatory disease. They do not suffer the inflammatory diseases that we do. They also steward the greatest biodiversity outside their body. So what is it about their cosmology? Not that we all want to go, live back in huts or, be separated from the cultures that we love in today's world, but what can we learn from the indigenous communities around us that have stewarded and continue to steward the greatest amount of healthful practices, both for the planet and for their own bodies?
So, then I think that your critique of Western and modern medicine is one that I share, but it's like a little bit different than, and obviously because you work in medicine, you can speak to this, than say some of the holistic critiques that we'll hear, and I'm sympathetic to those as well. But I think what that misses, right? It's not an Eastern medicine versus Western thing. It's how is medicine reflective of the systems that we live under, I would imagine that very few of your colleagues even think to ask that question.
Yes, it's very true. And I would say that while I do support people, meditating, and there's a health benefit to doing yoga and to eating well, to eating organic if possible, I want that to be available to everybody, not just people who are wealthy and not just people who look to their own individual healing, but that we should have the opportunity for everyone to breathe clean air, for everyone to drink unpolluted water, for everyone to have access to healthful foods, nutritious foods. And we can't have that in a capitalist society. It just won't exist. It cannot exist. And so I hold the holistic health movement responsible for continuing the same kind of capitalist atomization of the individual and focus on the individual as opposed to the systems level healing. So I call that like really holistic health, understanding how history and lines of power are shaping the world around us, and our bodies are responding to those shapes. And if those shapes are damaging, which they are for all of us, the outcome we'll get is inflammation. If those shapes are healing, the outcome we'll get is better health. And so I look for that, that holistic analysis incorporating history and lines of power so that we can all move together in solidarity to create health. So then I guess let's talk a little bit more about how to expand some of these systems. Medical innovation, I never thought of it this way, but you write about how it's basically not a rising tide that lifts all boats, essentially. We can both celebrate medical innovation and also see it as kind of working within that same system that you discuss. So talk a little bit about what you've experienced in your field. So I would never want to throw away Western science or Western medicine, and I want to make that clear. A lot of our book is based on weaving together Western science with other ways of understanding. We need to expand who is the peer in peer review. We need to allow more systems of knowledge to complicate and deepen our understanding of how to be effective as healing in the healing arts. We need to go back to understanding that our work can be healing, and we're not just biomedical technicians of broken body parts. We need to get back to learning how to listen to our patients. So I definitely celebrate and love the advances we see in medicine. I do completely and wholeheartedly reject the logic of domination of colonialism that has shaped how medicine works. And that is why I work with many different groups around the world, and especially here in Turtle Island, to decolonize medicine. So we're doing this work at the Deep Medicine Circle. Everyone can go check it out, deepmedicinecircle.org, where we are working with farmers and healers and doctors and lawyers and artists to advance a system of food in medicine that have always been coexistent, to really create new models of what healing and health can look like from community, and also to partner with other groups around the country who are doing this, like the Mini-Wachoni Health Circle in Standing Rock, where I was really blessed to be invited out to help serve. But it is these innovations that are coming from our communities struggle that are really on, individual obsessions of, diets or
I think we're losing you a little bit. It might be back. Okay, I think you're back. Yes, you might have cut out just a little bit. So I apologize if I'm repeating anything. But I appreciated your mention of Standing Rock. We did an interview and reckoned with a lot of the climate elements that are, of course, important to understanding the consequences of capitalism. And it makes sense that that would be a place that you would be kind of attracted to seeing as a starting point for a lot of like these new ways to view medicine, specifically in the United States, and practice it. And you mentioned indigenous communities. In the United States, there are enormous health disparities with indigenous communities as well. And the way that the response has been, or the reaction to the extreme system of colonialization and domination that we've inflicted upon indigenous communities in the United States, has been, oh, well, like the racist trope, they're alcoholics or whatever. Like, I mean, that's a clear manifestation of this very dynamic that you lay out in your book.
Yes, and we should know that, Hitler came to the United States to study what the United States did to indigenous people to make his, final solution for his undesirable people in Europe. And so this system of violence and genocide that continues in this area in the North America is continuing to wreak havoc on the bodies and communities of indigenous people and their lands. And so the work, when you see, Winona LaDuke and our, warriors out stopping line 3, you see that people are very deeply concerned with public health, the health of the water, the health of the future, the health of the people there. These are public health measures, and actually they're the most effective ones. The indigenous pipeline resistance has been the most effective source of cutting greenhouse gases in North America. And so let's follow what's effective if we're serious about climate science, and that really requires following indigenous leadership.
Right. I wanted to expand on another point that you touched on, but about the concept of how, on the micro level, Western/modern medicine tends to separate. Like, okay, problem with the head, problem with your lungs, problem with your colon, whatever. And how that is, I never thought about this way until reading what you wrote, but that is so reflective of the systems of atomization under capitalism, and how that reflects in different ways. And talk a little bit about how you saw those patterns repeating in your own profession.
Well, we organized the book. The book is called Inflamed, Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice. And we organized it like an anatomical textbook, starting out with, the immune system, going to the, cardiovascular system, the respiratory system. We take people through a tour. And by the end of the book, we're showing how even those concepts of, atomizing the body into these different systems makes no sense. The gut-brain microbiota axis is what keeps us healthy and modulates our inflammatory response. So the stress response, the inflammatory response itself is delocalized not only within our bodies, but it's being shaped by the millions of microbes that live inside us. So even our concepts of self must be challenged by what we know in science. And science is so much farther ahead of where medicine will go, and even our understandings of who we are. So it's an exciting time to see what microbiology has taught us, what ecology is teaching us, and how that there's an intersection between these things and traditional ecological knowledge in our indigenous communities, which is why the work of scientists and and in traditional ecological knowledge keepers is so vital right now, because there is a beautiful cultural intersection, a way of knowing intersection. And that's why opening ourselves to more peers and peer review is so critical at this moment. But yes, like there is, our neurological system is being trained in its development by the microbes in our gut. So if we don't have those healthy microbes in our gut,
well, we may have lost Rupa here.
We're gonna take a little break.
Yeah, let's take a quick break and we will try to get her back. 1 second. We are back and appreciate you sticking with us, everybody. Hopefully the connection's a little bit better. So I guess now I'm forgetting where we left off, but I wanted to talk a little bit about pollution too, because that's something that is like one of the most obvious manifestations of inflammation, and of course our water sources as well. Flint, Michigan, and a variety of other cities throughout the country, and the construction of pipelines is something we touched on a little bit earlier. But people can easily draw those connections, and I think it might be a useful place to start when trying to get some people to think a little bit harder about capitalism as how it informs our medicine and our health, and how it inflames us and the world. So pollution as connected to our bodies. Talk a little bit about that and how that fits into the larger thesis.
Well, air pollution, for example, affects every part, every system of our bodies. The particles, particulate matter that come through toxic industries end up affecting our brains, affecting the development of Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancers. We know all this now. We also know that particulate matter also can carry viruses on it. So there's concern for how influenza spreads, how COVID has been spreading. And now with these wildfires that rage in California and the West Coast, that matter also, some of that smoke, especially when it's in their rural-urban interface, is highly toxic to breathe. And the thing that we have to know is that most of these communities who are disproportionately impacted by poor air, they don't get a choice for the air that they breathe. That choice is made for them by the industries. And so just like I mentioned with the tobacco ban, that was effective. It worked. It improved health outcomes. The only people that hurt was the tobacco industry. It's the same thing with the fossil fuel industry. It's time to ban fossil fuel inputs in our food supply, all the toxic chemicals and pesticides that damage the soil microbiology. So just as I mentioned, the gut microbiome was so critical for our health and inflammation, the soil microbiome is the same. And I drove through California Central Valley on Indigenous Peoples Day, and there was a windstorm, and we are turning California into a dust bowl. All that soil was aerosolized. It was just, it was so sad to see that. And it's happening because of the agricultural industries that are poisoning the soil and damaging the health of the water, the soil, and the air all at the same time. In addition, they use unbelievably toxic labor practices where they degrade the value and dignity of our, farm working community. And we've seen that, with COVID, those are the people who are most heavily hit. So what COVID has shown us, and this is, it really did prove the thesis of our book, is that the more our bodies are shaped through social oppression, the more inflamed we become. The people who are coming into the hospital with severe COVID are people whose bodies have been really shaped through social oppression, whether that's class, race, gender, all the dynamics, all the axes. And so in order to have a body that can respond with a healthful response, you need to have a healthy world around. And it's time to put those industries that are causing poor health, put them aside. They should not be running and dictating public health. And they are.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to ask if you could talk a little bit more about labor in general and its effect on health, because that's something in the United States where we have zero public awareness on. Something that's actually, it's increased during COVID, right? Because the undervaluing of labor and the extreme conditions that people had to work under. I think we're seeing an unprecedented, in the past few decades, uprising of labor consciousness, which is really important. But beyond COVID, the effect of exploitative labor practices on health and how that has shown itself in your work, and then also what you wrote about.
Yeah, so it really is a time for a care revolution around the world. It is a time for workers to withhold their labor, if as we can, and work with mutual aid groups to get us through general strikes, to get us through resistance to participating in a system that demands our exposure and demands our degradation and our poor health. And so what we see is that worker collectives, where workers are in charge of the decisions that they make in their labor space, in the places where they work, when they own and really are directly benefiting from their labor and the practices, those people, the more autonomous those spaces are, the better health outcomes you see. And that's not a shock, but it's a consciousness that's been really suppressed in the United States since the 1950s, and it needs to grow because that is how we will get better health outcomes. There was an amazing study that came out of Alberta, Canada, that showed that Indigenous people that spoke their own languages were protected against diabetes, controlling for all other things. And so it's not just about diet and health, like diet and exercise, which is how doctors will talk about these diseases of lifestyle. These aren't diseases of lifestyle. These are diseases of capitalism. These are diseases of systems of domination that are impacting our bodies. So those communities that spoke their native languages had lower rates of diabetes. So understanding who we are and having a greater sense of autonomy and self-directedness really improves our health and well-being. And this is not rocket science. This is an idea that's been around since 1848, when Rudolf Virchow was saying the same thing about German imperialism at the time, where Europe was encountering a similar uprising of labor consciousness, where the working class was tired of being abused by the bourgeoisie. So it's important to understand historically where we are and how to move things forward for greater health.
Yeah, and I guess lastly, or nearing the end, because I know you have to go, but I'm curious how your analysis and understanding differed, because we talked a lot about the United States, but there were other examples given, of course, about the UK. It stands out, the disparity in, I believe it was infant mortality or mothers dying when giving birth. Was there something particularly extreme about the United States' inflammation as compared to other countries in the global north?
We have the greatest burden of inflammatory disease. We have the shortest life expectancy. We spend the most on healthcare. So those, the system is being driven for profit. It's not being driven for health. And that's what, really needs to shift and change if we want to see better health outcomes. But you find these same patterns in every society that's been shaped through colonial capitalist cosmologies. You find the same outcomes in India. You find these same disparities there. And we talk about that in the book. And it's important to understand that it's not about saying, oh, okay, well, the British are gone from India, so things are fine, when the architecture of the society has been set up and it's still run that way. So that's, what we really need to take aim at is how do we retool, how do we restructure in order to get health? Because health will not be possible if we keep, I can give as much insulin as you want in the hospital, but I'm not going to affect the rates of diabetes until we start restructuring our world.
Right. Well, I really appreciate your time today. We had someone write in called Dank Uger, very funny name. Amazing guest. Please have her back. If you write a new book or just in general, we'd love to have you. Rupa Marya, Associate Professor of Medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, and co-author of Inflamed, Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice. Rupa, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your close reading and your great questions. You take care.
You too. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk about Jeff Bezos and also wrap things up. We are back. We are back from our break. Back from the break. All right, so we are going to have a little bit of fun here, even before the fun half. So if you're watching us on Peacock, there's more of this.
Yeah.
On our show in the fun half.
I just want to comment on the interview briefly, like just to look at this as, not an individual issue, because I used to be a researcher for Vice News, and we did a episode on food, and so I had to research topics for the panel to discuss on food. And the rise in obesity in America is clearly something that is not just people decided they were going to start not caring about their weight. It's clearly something that comes from our agriculture and food systems, because in 1980, I think there was like 2 or 3 states that had an obesity rate above like 20%. And now it's basically every state. And there's been a little bit of change to the methodology there, but not enough to describe that massive change. And it's clear that this is the way that
but why not blame the individual?
Yeah, they definitely don't blame the food capitalists.
Yeah, right. And so that of course obscures exactly the dynamics that she was trying to say. So I mean, that's a great point. I wish I asked that. But now let's just have a little bit of fun talking about Jeff Bezos. Although this clip oddly makes me kind of sad. It's sad.
No, I'm very sad after this clip.
Yes.
It's funny. It's like I can't stop laughing at it. And when I'm not watching it, I want to watch it again because of how bad it is. But when I start watching it, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Why am I watching this?
So, yes, it's a train wreck. It's like a dark comedy distilled into a small clip. Jeff Bezos returned from space again. And he had William Shatner of Star Trek fame, who is 90 years old, which I did not realize.
Star Trek's an old show.
Yeah, and he looks great. Bezos had him on the aircraft as a way to create publicity, but Shatner was excited by this experience because who wouldn't be emotional and in awe when you go to space and see the globe? That's like, I mean, but it's another day at the office for this psychopath Bezos.
But I mean, yeah, Shatner, just a hero of many children. I mean, I didn't really watch Star Trek, but as far as like the imaginative space of space itself, you know, this is a guy who saw, I mean, 90 years old. You've seen a pretty amazing slice of American history with regards to those, particularly space travel, NASA and stuff like that, and you helped people imagine that. And so you would imagine like you would have something kind of profound to say after going up and down in basically a very elaborate hot air balloon.
Right. The leading man on one of the two biggest sci-fi star franchises, Star Trek and Star Wars, comes with Jeff Bezos. And anybody with a pulse who was able to give someone like that, an icon, an opportunity to actually be in space when he's known for being a part of a franchise that takes place in space and had such a cultural impact on so many people, they would be humbled. They would be interested in their experience. Not Jeff.
Not only is it different than what you thought, it happened so quickly. You know what the impression I had that I never expected to have is you're shooting up.
Oh my God!
Give me this champagne bottle.
Come here. I want one. I want to hear this. Here. You want a little of this? Hey.
No. Oh my God. Dudes rock.
Oh, and Shatner.
The champagne showers have begun. Smiles all around.
We never get to find out what the impression Shatner never expected to have was. We just never get to find out.
He's crying. He's crying about how beautiful it was. And Jeff's like, God, do I have to keep this? I want one.
That's like the writing style of like Grand Theft Auto like franchise. Like, look at this dumb oligarch that like can't prioritize between hearing a national treasure speak about a transcendent moment he just had that you included him on so he could basically have it, and you need to I mean, frankly, not even spray it that well champagne twice. I mean, normal guy.
I mean, it's the narcissism of it, of course, is what's jarring. But like you mentioned this before the show too, just respect for your elders.
Yeah, this makes me want to call my grandparents.
Again, he's 90 years old, and you've got to just listen to him talk about his experience a little bit there. It's unbelievable. But I mean, he just wants to revel in his own glory of his own creation, Jeff Bezos.
People are saying that Shatner does get the opportunity to go on later, but I think it speaks for itself.
I definitely do.
In the middle of saying the one thing I was not expecting to experience, and then Jeff is like, "Oh, I want to hear this." I want to hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff Bezos shouldn't be allowed to command this amount of sort of economic priorities of the globe anyway, but certainly not if this is the way he's going to appreciate it, like a 13-year-old.
Yes, and obviously, but I think we're going to cancel Jeff Bezos after this, don't you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think this is the last straw.
This is the last straw. You had a bunch of chances, and now with William Shatner standing right there, to disrespect him like this, now I don't mess with you anymore.
Being one of the largest scale coercers of labor in the world, I mean, that almost enough in and of itself, Mr. Bezos, but you disrespect Shatner like this.
Yeah, I mean, I was willing to give you another chance, but no longer. All right, folks, with that, I hope that everybody enjoyed that clip and that interview. So, Peacock audience, we will have to say adieu. goodbye. Wait, which is the right one to say?
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Right. I'm sure we butchered that as well. Could say aloha, because then you can substitute that, and it's hello and goodbye, and you'll be seeing us tomorrow. Sam will be back for Casual Friday. But for now, we will say goodbye to you. And if you enjoyed this program and you're watching us on Peacock, you can check out the fun half of our program on our YouTube page and streaming everywhere. More clips like that crazy Jeff Bezos one that we just saw there. See you tomorrow. But if you're sticking around, off to the fun half. So yeah, that was incredible. we were like, should we do a substantive Joe Manchin clip at the end of the show?
No, boring.
No, I'm sick of talking about him.
Yeah, I mean, we know that. The thing is like, Psaki gave away the game when she said we still think we'll get a reconciliation package, not the reconciliation package. We knew this was going to happen, so we can just talk about Bezos and how billionaires are bad.
Yeah. All right. So everybody watching here, if you enjoy what we do, please become a member. Join the Majority Report. Helps us do the show every single day, 2.5 hours plus, particularly when Sam's around, the plus, and a variety of other things. We're going to be taking your calls, 646-257-3920. But first, Matt, which one of you is going to promote your show first?
I like how you just said Matt.
There, you spoke first. All right. You get to talk about Doomed.
You refer to us as if you would refer to like, I don't know, deer, like a pack of deer, the same word for both.
Yeah. Matt.
All right. So tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time at youtube.com/Matt Binder. And then later as a podcast at doomedcast.com, I will be having on film director Zeb Haradan. He will be talking about his 2005 documentary, Still Waiting for Nasara. Now, if you follow me on YouTube or Twitch, we watched the movie together on this past Tuesday. And if you're wondering, and if you didn't watch it, you're probably wondering why are we talking about a 2005 movie? And that's because it's relevant today. Nasara is a conspiracy theory where people basically believe that there's a set of laws that were supposed to they were supposed to be enacted in the US under the Bush administration that would have completely wiped all of their debts clean. They would have financial freedom, no problems at all. Everything is great. No mortgage to pay, no credit card debts, et cetera, et cetera. Other things too, like the abolishment of the IRS is involved, so no more taxes. But Bush orchestrated 9/11 and then the Iraq War to make this not happen. And to this day, people still believe this conspiracy theory, and it got wrapped up into QAnon. There's a whole subsection of QAnon believers who believe in Nasara, and it'll be quite an adventure talking about this. There's aliens involved, lizard people involved, the Illuminati, a right-wing conspiracy where Bill Clinton is somehow a good guy. It's a lot. You guys will enjoy this one.
Wow, that is a bold right-wing conspiracy theory.
It's the conspiracy to end all conspiracies. Matt,
right.
What's happening over on Left Reckoning? Did you have your show last night?
We did. Branko Marcetic on to...
He's awesome.
Yeah, we discussed... I recently reread his book, Yesterday's Man, on Joe Biden, how Joe Biden sucks. And it's the book that you would want to read to sort of understand why we've ended up where we are, where we can't actually function, or they can't actually function as a party and get an agenda passed. Not actually super surprising. So we talk about that. We talk about how one of the definite benefits of having Democrats as power is it sort of demonstrates how awful they are, and they can't just fundraise and pretend. And they're almost more dangerous than opposition, which maybe even like some of the Russiagators could agree with at this point. But anyway, we talked about that, how this is not a surprise, and a little bit of Joe's history. So check that out. Patreon.com/LeftReckoning for the post game.
Brandon, hello.
Hello. Sorry for being tardy. My internet had a little bit of a hiccup, but I'm here now.
Okay, well, glad to see you. What's under happening over at the discourse?
I just want to say I'm a big fan of preposition humor, so that really tickled me in the right place. So We have a recording this weekend. You know, ideally, we'll have an episode out for all of our lovely listeners by Monday. Hope everyone enjoyed the last one. I mean, it seems like they did. Habana syndrome.
Habana.
Habana?
That's how it's pronounced. I've heard people pronounce it Havana syndrome, but it's actually Habana syndrome.
What about Havana syndrome?
I'm not from the South. Like, I guess I am from the South, but you know, I'm not that far from the South.
All right. Well, I was just saying, you know, next time maybe I go out to dinner and have a little bit too much to drink, I'm calling in sick with Havana syndrome. We'll see if Sam buys it, but I'm just letting you guys know that everyone needs to back me up on this.
Like an NBA syndrome.
I mean, honestly, the entire side of my face was a little bit like hot for 2 days, and I was sure that I had finally been targeted.
Yeah, like the Russian space laser just hit only on one side of you. They were only able to get that angle.
I mean, yeah, you know, it was the right side, so I think that's like my dominant side, and that's just part of their plan.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's one way to immobilize you.
Yeah, imbalance.
646-257-3920. See you all in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? What? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. And Colin from Nebraska IMs for me, which is like perfect. Emma, did you catch the guy dressed as a red, quote, Granny Smith on The Bachelorette? Laughed my ass off. Thinking of Sam as Michelle explained all the different apples to him. I watched it yesterday, and I was thinking of Sam the whole time. Like, she's a teacher, so the guy showed up dressed as an apple to like be a member as a gimmick, and she asked what kind of apple you are, and he said Granny Smith. And he was in a red apple suit. And then she was like, you got it wrong, and listed all these different kinds of apples. And he was like, wow, you really know your apples. I was like, Sam should be on The Bachelorette. This is his kind of woman. Even though, you know, it's probably like a 30-year age difference. But how do you go dress as an apple on the TV and you don't know what apple you're going to be? You're a Red Delicious. It's a red apple suit.
She also mentioned, Michelle, she also mentioned that he literally chose the only green apple.
Only green apple. He really screwed himself. I mean, he was just under pressure, and that was the first apple he could think of. Anyway, I thought about Sam and laughed to myself about it for a little while yesterday, actually. Bear Thumb 2. I don't know. I don't know. Bear at Home 2. Okay. Emma or old Matt? New Matt was mean to me on Twitter a couple of years ago. Can I call in to talk about it?
Please do.
What happened? I want to know, actually. Yeah.
Now I want to know. We had a call yesterday of somebody who was upset that they were called infertile in our chat.
See, I only use ad hominems after I've made good points. So I give people something to respond to if they don't want to respond to my good points.
That's very thoughtful of you.
Yes, it is. I know.
It gives them an out.
Sam from Ottawa.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just reading IMs. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I found that online, you know, people have an argument in their head already planned out mostly. So, like, no matter what you respond, they're going to respond to the same things. So sometimes you can just let them go off.
Yeah, that's what I found is like let people talk themselves rather than like ask you the questions. Like, for instance, Bitcoin. People are saying you're going to look really stupid in a few years. It's like, well, what's going to happen in a few years? And to have them actually elaborate that is something that's very difficult to do.
Well, you're going to look real stupid in a few years where like 0.01% of people who invested in Bitcoin earn some money or NFTs, and then the other 99.99% have like lost large sums, or I guess small to large sums on trying to be that 0.01%. So
excuse me, guys. Bitcoin's going to change the world for everybody, all millennials and all Generation Z, all Zoomers. Yeah. We're all going to be lifted out of poverty. We're all going to be multimillionaires thanks to cryptocurrency.
Yeah, we're going to money launder our way to a leftist revolution.
I actually had an idea for I'm gonna say a cryptid, but like I had an idea for like a NFT like collection after like researching them that I think was so good that I couldn't even put out the joke because I think someone would steal it and like do a scam, and only I'm allowed to make money off of my ideas. So like, but be on the lookout.
Oh.
Angel, Trailer Park Boys did a live segment on their website of the Shatner space experience. Even they were like, don't spray Captain Kirk with champagne when he's all emotional. Prairie Fire Kowalski from Nebraska. Wow, Emma, your interview today is really showing off your anarcho-veganism. LOL, in reference to some of the interesting aspects of our food industry. I do agree mostly with the professor. A lot of our systems are designed to be efficient, which means we sacrifice the effectiveness of nutrition. Even the beef I get to eat because I raise my cattle a bit longer than what most people buy off the shelves is because I control the inputs and can ensure that it's going to be a leaner animal, that it is not stressed. Addressing the systems that lead to this is the only way to make any measurable impact on the world. Individual action, no matter how noble, will fall short. It doesn't matter if you wear a mask. If no one else does, the disease will spread. I could go on and on about this, but I'll leave it at that. Leftist poggers. All right, well, let's have a little bit more fun with this teacher clip. So, one of the downsides of mask wearing is that you can't really fully tell who people are, and sometimes you confuse some people. That's happened to me, right? You don't, like, you thought it's someone you may have known, and like, it's harder to tell when they have the mask on. So we can neither confirm nor deny that this is what Kyrsten Sinema was doing when she was away from Congress recently. It's not her, but it is a teacher in California, Riverside, California, who chose to teach her math class in this way. A trigger warning. I know that a lot of indigenous people might be upset by this. It's also insane. She's trying to be a real life Mr. G, I guess. And I know that apparently an indigenous person, kid in the class, filmed this and was very offended by it. I don't have much more to add. Just watch this and prepare to cringe.
Mohawks. Is that right? What that is? Okay. So got to what? 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 So got to no no so got to what? So got to what? So got and eventually.
She's still going, huh?
Yeah.
She got more.
And I get all of my feathers.
No, there's a second video where she stands on a table at some point.
I haven't actually watched the full video with sound on, but there are a lot of there's multiple clips. This was the entire 50-minute class. And most classes are longer than 50 minutes now. It seems like this was the entire lesson on geometry, I guess.
Yeah, so SOHCAHTOA is sine, cosine, tangent, how you remember it, sine,
yes.
opposite, that sort of stuff. But I learned that. I did not learn
it too, yeah.
Well, I mean, Common Core changed all sorts of curriculums. And it's crazy how things have changed since I learned math.
That's what I'm confused about. Is this critical race theory? Because I keep hearing that critical race theory tells teachers to teach kids to be racist, and this looks an awful lot like that attempt right there.
The thing is, though, you would never forget SOHCAHTOA if that happened to you. So I mean, who's against education now?
No, this isn't critical race theory. This is just American history. That's
I think we should learn how to combine more pedagogy with racial attacks. It might be really good for learning the learning experience.
Yeah, you'll never forget it, as you say, right?
Right. Yeah, I get trying to right. I get how it's important to inspire kids and create ways to make sure they remember things. But this there's a point where I think you just go, A, I shouldn't do this, but then B, now that I've done it, I think I've gone on long enough. I mean, at what point does she realize?
Hold on. We got to show the second. She keeps going and stands on a desk. Bradley, it's the second. It's the second video in this tweet, but yeah, Bradley's looking for it right now. I mean, I don't know. Again, I keep thinking about Mr. G from Summer Heights High in this situation. Very, very similar vibes, except maybe she's having a psychotic break at the same time. It's really hard to know.
This is why we need things not CRT properly, exactly, but racial and cultural sensitivity training in schools. Clearly we're not doing enough of that. What an amazing example of just imagine if someone dressed. I'm trying to think of a counterexample that would be the CRT would go viral for the anti-CRT folks, and it's honestly very difficult. If maybe SOHCAHTOA was some sort of shekel thing, and you dressed up as some sort of anti-Semitic cartoon,
right?
Right, then maybe people would understand. But even then, I feel the anti-CRT people would probably like it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly this. They're this is the real American history I know.
I just don't know how you come up with this lesson plan. It's I don't know how it happened. It just seems odd, to be honest. You can get math lesson plans online that if you don't want to come up with your own, but they have, it wasn't even a song. I'm sure there are songs about SOHCAHTOA that you could learn. It's not really anything but her chanting it over and over again.
I know, but okay, then just I know I'm subjecting the audience to this kind of horror, but the point where she stands on the desk is something out of a movie.
Dead Poet Society, or is it a different movie?
Yeah, it's obviously there's gonna be swelling music in the background. It's so inspiring. No, that's not it.
Jesus. You want their heads down on their desk. Yeah, this is like a.
Oh my God, what's going on here? the thing is, that first clip you watched, there were like a smattering of laughter.
We're good, yeah.
Like a smattering of laughter. Like there was a point where like there were some
Well,
kids who
they're
were just
uncomfortable.
Right. But no, but this second video, they're not even like humoring her anymore. They're just like, I can't believe she's still doing this.
Yeah.
He's got his head down on his desk like he's taking a nap.
Right. Well, the point is that I mean, the narcissism of it too. Put aside, of course, the insane racism and like insensitivity. The idea that you have that little self-awareness, that you think that this is what the students want to watch. It's more just an exercise in your own, like, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's why I made the joke about cinema, right? Like having to put yourself at the center of everything, and it doesn't really matter how everybody else responds. Plus the funky pants, totally a cinema outfit.
Yeah.
We don't know where she was last week. She's still not disclosing it.
This person needs to get help, I think. Because that is, I mean, well, one, I mean, not that it's like completely unexpected given American culture, like, right? She's an exponent of, but to do that and to jump on desks and to shriek around like that, I would not want my children to be taught by that person.
Also, I'll say she doesn't look like she's like, in her early 20s or something. So she doesn't look like a new teacher, which means this probably has been the lesson plan for a number of years if she's been teaching math class for more than 1 year. So I would love to know how long this charade has been going on. It seems quite crazy.
Yeah. More Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Imagine trying to teach people about right triangles and being this obtuse. Math joke. Illuminati kids. I'm 34 and can confirm the math teacher in my rural area school also likened the Sokotoa thing to a Native American chant. I thought it would have gone by the wayside by now, but obviously they just added sick dance moves to it.
Yeah, I mean that's how I learned it too, right? In I guess 2000, early 2000s. But it wasn't like they added like 3 whole verses to it since then. Like it was like a throwaway comment that teachers mentioned back then. It's like, oh, okay, I kind of see that kind of convention, but I've never seen like a whole dance routine added to it. But I mean, you also can't honestly rule out the idea that this is some sort of effort to get canceled or something, which happens all the time now. Like someone wants to actively make a stand at their job about PC culture or whatever, and then they do something. I want to say like this because this is a little bit out there, and and then we have to read a blog post about how this person was like unfairly like chastised or whatever for like what is essentially taking up a 50-minute class period with what is an odd if not offensive chant.
If you guys are wondering what the next what next week's interview is in Barry Weiss's Substack, I got.
That's the only one I read because that's the only one that has like any kind of humor attached to it, where it's just like stories about people being convinced to take like principled stances for like being able to chant Sokotoa in a math class, when in reality it's just like don't, there's no principle behind that. Just like don't do it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I just learned it as it sounds like a Native American name like Pocahontas, and that was that. There was no chanting. There was no additional. There wasn't a whole theatrical thing. It was just Sokotoa. It sounds like a Native name, doesn't it? That's how you remember it. That's what I was told when I was a kid.
I don't think I was told about it at all, like in relation to.
And in North Dakota, I would have figured we would have taught it like that.
Oh, I'm in Jersey. Tim Kaine getting brain. It's all.
Classic.
It's hard to be the white guy in charge of the gentrification of black folks. I feel you. It was a reference to the Tim Kaine clip earlier. Dr. Chow's MD. After listening to Kaine talk to Rahm Emanuel, it makes me think we should comb through Kaine's record as mayor and see what, quote, scar tissue he acquired and what things caused him to learn and relearn why the citizens would not trust the authorities. Kevin?
Because I mean, there's some fundamental truth that if you are any sort of mayor in an American city, that you might have to cover up misconduct from your cops because, or else.
Right.
I mean, I don't think Rahm should be getting off from being afraid. I think he's completely craven and would do it again.
congressional baseball fan. I once signed up to take Kirsten Sinema's social justice class as an elective during my master's program. It was such a bad and boring class, I dropped it, even though that caused me to delay graduating for another semester. Kirsten Sinema is like if a Western town movie set were a person. Aaron is not cool. Went to the Knicks game last night. Amazing. Double OT thriller with the Garden. I was hoping Sam would rub his face in it. I'm predicting 50 wins. I mentioned this, like I had it was my stepdad's birthday, so I had to go have dinner, and I only saw the OT, and it was incredible. All right, you want to take a call, Matt?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's take a call. Let's go to the phones. Let's take this person. They've been on the longest. 781. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Chuck from Indiana.
Hi, Chuck from Indiana. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, I had a couple of questions, but I figured I'd like you guys to pick which one. So one on filibuster reform or one on parasocial relationships. Which takes your fancy?
Well, I think you could guess I'll take the second one, but what does everybody else think?
I'm always down to talk about relationships with ghosts. So, if you want to talk, drop some spooky knowledge on us, let's go.
I'm sorry, Brandon, I don't have any spooky knowledge, but I do find it very interesting. Like, I don't know, I think what you guys do is really cool, and I love the reporting. And I think, would I want to try doing something similar? And I always think, that sounds the risk of developing parasocial relationships with strangers sounds kind of terrifying. And I like the idea of I'd probably want to support somebody who's publicly facing as opposed to being it myself. So I was just kind of curious to get your thoughts on what you guys think about the fact that you guys are developing parasocial relationships. And I don't know if you had positive experiences and negative experiences.
That we are developing that we are
that people are developing them with us, I guess. That's your question.
I guess I have a comment on it because I think about this a lot. Like my number one source of paranoia when I smoke weed is sometimes I'll start to think too hard about, oh my God, there's so much footage of me on the internet. Oh my God, there's so many people that know me and I don't know them, and so many people that have judgments about me that they're probably pretty negative, and I'll never know how many people know me or what they know about me. So I have some anxiety about it, as you can probably tell. But when I'm doing the work and doing this, I have so much fun, and it feels so fun and meaningful for me that it's I don't think about that unless I'm already in some sort of spiral.
I mean, your experience is probably much different than all of ours. And I would say every, woman that puts themselves out there on the internet, because obviously there are different things that could happen. If someone develops a parasocial relationship with you, then they probably would do with me or Brandon or Matt or, Yeah.
I mean, I personally don't feel anyone feels that strongly about me, to have that kind of relationship with me. I try to be cognizant of the idea that people decide to spend their time with me to listen, to my infrequent podcast and any of the other appearances that I do. So I feel very humbled by that kind of that people will take time out of their day to listen to what I have to say. But I mean, I've only ever gotten positive feedback, and none of it ever seems too personal or invasive. So maybe I'm just the outlier here. I think everyone's been very nice.
Well, that's the thing, that people who develop parasocial relationships aren't always it's not, it has nothing to do with the critiques you receive. People just feel like they know you based on them watching you all the time. Doesn't necessarily mean they're reaching out to you.
Yeah.
I mean,
that worries me a little. That creeps me out just a little, but it's not, everyone. This audience in particular is really great. I think I got worse stuff at my old job.
Right. I personally don't get it. I don't even act like I know people who I actually really do know in real life. So to develop a relationship with people online is pretty foreign to me. But to people who do feel that way, if it helps you and then I got no problem with it. Just don't be weird about it if we ever meet in real life, please.
I've the last year or so, I've been getting recognized more often, or actually for the first time in my life, by just random people. Shout out Derek at the bodega near my place. and I'm not naturally comfortable with that. Like that's not in my. I'm growing more sort of like when it happens, I'm so shocked, especially when I have a mask on that people can recognize like who I am, and just my natural sociability is not to like roll with that. And I don't know. I think if I I don't know. Like I kind of would like some of like the Thomas Pynchon recluse sort of thing in media compared to the being out and being, you know, like Emma said, overexposed, frankly. But I also feel very lucky to be able to do this, and it's a small price to pay.
Yeah.
The only person who's ever recognized me outside was Jabari Brisport one time when he was canvassing, and I was kind of surprised, even though we've met before in multiple times in person. I was surprised that he could like see through my disguise of my mask. And then I asked and felt immediately very silly when he just like, you know, insinuated it's because, you know, I mean,
like
it worked for Batman. I don't know why it can't work for me.
I encourage, if you see me in person, say hi to me. I don't mind it.
Me neither. No.
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's just the one thing that does freak me out is when I get like a message or, hey, I saw you and I was too scared to say hi, and I'm like, when? What was I doing? Like,
oh, I felt really bad. I was walking home from work like a few months ago, and like a lot of people on Flatbush Ave, which not to give away where I walk every day, but that was where I was here, and I assumed it was somebody just asking for a petition or something like that, and I frankly ignore people and continue listening to my podcast all the time. And I did that, and there was something about like the way this person reacted, where I'm like, wait, was that wasn't the normal reaction?
It just happened to me like a few months ago. This guy came up to me, and I thought it was and I was about to just be an asshole and like,
well, I did that.
Go past, yeah.
I'm like, sorry, I don't have time, and I pointed in my headphones, and then I tweeted out like, hey, by the way, if anybody did that, I assumed you were like someone trying to sell or get a petition or something. I apologize, and it actually was somebody, so I was able to apologize.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so. Okay, well, I apologize if I did that.
I live in an apartment complex where someone who watches this show recognized me, so that was a little bit nerve-wracking.
Someone on my floor is a fan of the show. Yeah,
they turned out to be cool, thankfully, because otherwise it could have gone. Also, we should say that just recognizing us and talking to us in person is not a parasocial relationship. A parasocial relationship is specifically when you feel like you know this person already just from watching them online. It's not just like, oh, you know, I watch you on YouTube, I'm a big fan. That's not the same thing. Thing.
Well, I think but parasocial relationships, it would be a spectrum. So, you know, there's different degrees, right?
I wouldn't consider just recognizing something no different than if you were watching TV and saw like a movie star and said, oh, hey, big fan. To me, that's not a parasocial relationship.
More of a time commitment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internal time commitment.
I'm always down to chop it up. I love to talk. If anything, you're gonna get tired talking to me before I get tired talking to you.
I appreciate it, Charlie. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a nice day, guys.
Yeah, you too.
You want to go to another call? Or you want to take a sound?
Let's take another call.
All right, cool. Let's go to 336. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 336.
Hello, this is Andrew from Greensboro.
Hey, Andrew. Sound great. What would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, I just liked the interview today where you guys were talking about, you know, health outcomes and stuff like that. And it kind of reminds me of how people like Joe Rogan and Bill Maher, they kind of, well, Joe Rogan to a less extent, but I know Bill Maher especially, he puts down Medicare for all because he's like, oh, they're supposed to, you know, be able to, I don't know, do their own thing when it comes to health. And he's one to talk because he's so rich. But like me, I'm coming from, you know, poor area where there's not, it's like a food desert. What kind of stuff am I going to be able to do by myself? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, well, she pointed that out about how like the holistic like wellness approach or eat organic, it's so class-based and it's so regional, and it's just like again another, here's this individual solution to this symptom and problem of capitalism.
Exactly, and that also kind of comes down to like, it comes down to simple things like when I played sports in high school, like even though some of the best guys on my team, they didn't have the best diets and stuff like that, but they were still able to keep in shape. But it's like, imagine how much better in shape they would be if they had access to, you know, all the stuff that's basically in richer neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Right? And then, you know, you talk about like, I mean, it just intersects with a whole bunch of things. I could go off on, and I'll be on this phone call for hours. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you so much for the call.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bender, do you see what I sent you?
Wait, I don't. Let me look.
Okay. I wanna.
Where did you send this to me?
Forget it. Pick up the highlighted call.
Oh, okay, I see. All right. Let's go to the phones again. 308. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, it's Kowalski from Nebraska.
Hey, Kowalski from Nebraska.
I hear it's your birthday.
Sorry about that. My screen just got wet. What was that?
I hear it's your birthday.
Sorry about that. My phone was doing some stuff. Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, happy
28
birthday.
years ago and 9 months, my parents decided to have a good time.
Well, okay.
Hey, it's true for everyone. It's not weird.
I know.
It's not weird to fixate on that.
Usually not what I think about though on my birthday.
I'm not going to fixate on that, but I agree with the caller.
We do things different in the Great Plains. What can I say?
So what do you do? What are you doing on your birthday?
Yeah.
Well, I'm out harvesting, and I feel compelled with that previous caller to say that this is not a parasocial relationship that I have with anybody, and it's more of a narcissistic one where I need the gratification of them tractor emojis in the live stream chat in order to feel satisfied that I've had a successful day. So,
we understand. Yes.
Just to be clear, I'm not trying to hunt down.
What?
Well, you don't want the conversation to end right there. I'm not trying to hunt down. This drops off.
Kowalski.
I'm still here. Sorry about that. Rural area problem.
Gotcha.
Hear ya. So is there anything?
But oh, go ahead, man.
No, I was gonna say, what would you have to talk about? Is there anything other than your birthday and what you're doing, or we could just keep talking about your birthday if you'd like to.
Well, speaking of the narcissism thing, I didn't know if you had like the soundboard for the whole, but if not, I understand.
It's hard to do the soundboard when Sam's out, but Matt is going to.
What does he want?
What do you want?
I can just a shofar. It's fine.
Kowalski needs to. We get to give Kowalski.
I could give you something. I don't have a shofar, but I could give you one of these.
It's great.
You know what? That almost means more to me.
There you go.
There you go.
Yes, and also just before I hang up, because I know I'm going to lose self-service in about 30 seconds, I did get tickets to go to your guys' live Boston show, which I'm very excited for. My only question to you guys is, what is your favorite type of beef sticks? Because I'm getting a cow butchered next month and would like to bring you some real high-quality beef.
My favorite type of beef stick is... What? I've never had a beef stick, so I don't know.
Yeah, like
what? Well, I'm impartial to like pepper jack, but I'm not sure what you guys are into.
See, I'm not a big spice guy, so I like to keep it simple.
Standard beef stick. Yeah. It's also the name of my band.
Well, alrighty then. I will keep that in mind, and I'm probably going to lose the.
Yeah, there you went.
Perfect. Man has great timing. Great timing.
All right. Well, thanks for the call, Kowalski, and happy birthday.
Well, he's gone. Happy birthday, Kowalski. Yes.
Yeah, he completely dropped. It wasn't even just a cutout. Like his phone dropped from our system. Yep.
All right. Well, I5, a parasocial relationship. Is that like Binder building a shrine for his Nancy Pelosi worship?
That would be a parasocial relationship, yes. That is probably dictionary definition. Throw it in there.
Mentions, yeah, you all are my best friends.
You're my best friend too.
Same. Bourbon Socialist, I just spoke with Elizabeth Warren and she says you guys are being very insensitive about that teacher. And she said she's going to help her take a DNA test so we can affirm this woman is actually a Native American descendant. You also don't know if this teacher's peepaw had
oh my God.
Had high cheekbones. So you should really reserve your judgment about her. Oh, it's vicious. Champagne commie. People will always feel like they know who you are based on what they can see externally, but the irony is that they don't even know who they themselves are. The COVID mask is not the only mask they are wearing. Whoa.
That's true. That's deep. Although I would say that, you know, in truth, I am only really interested in like card games, anime, and horror movies. So it's pretty, if you think that's true about me, then, oh, and of course, lifting. I almost forgot. So if you think that's true about me, that is kind of all I think about.
Right. People don't know that I literally made millions of dollars off of Bitcoin.
Oh.
That's your private face.
That's my private, yeah.
Bullprog, God, I wish we could do a full hour on all the antics going on in Minneapolis. An MPD officer smugly admits on video that they aren't responding to crime because they can't handle the scrutiny of their out-of-control behavior and blames city council, who by charter have no control over police as opposed to the mayor's sole control. And there are 2 ballot questions in the upcoming election. First one on giving the mayor more control, and the second on changing the police charter to take out minimum number of police on the force and creating a new Department of Public Safety. Bullprog, thank you for the info there. Much appreciated. All right, let's get to another clip or two.
There's a lot of good ones. We should probably knock out a few of these to make sure we get to them.
I agree. Good point. Well, let's talk about Gorka here. The right wing has collectively been in a tizzy over the fact that Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has been taking paternity leave. Him and his husband, they adopted 2 kids, I believe. And yeah, unfortunately, we are all in the position now of having to defend Pete Buttigieg in this instance because the right wing is so explicitly homophobic and crazy. Tucker Carlson made some homophobic joke about Buttigieg breastfeeding, but Gorka's got to take it a step further as the arbiter of what constitutes Western civilization. Despite a 75% approval for same-sex marriage in the United States, Gorka believes that a husband title should never be used when discussing 2 men being married.
Well, it would be fun because if they set that precedent, then we can do it with all of the documents regarding Obama, the Iran deal, Biden, and his actual encouragement of using the Logan Act to frame Mike Flynn. So whichever way you cut it, either Donald Trump destroys them, or we get all the weapons we need to uncover the real corruption, the real dirt of all these Democrat administrations that have sold America, to our enemies for decades now. But look, it's very simple. What else have they got, Grant? What else are you going to talk about as you approach the midterms? It's like the distractions of the last 2 impeachments. When the border is open, when the economy is tanking, when Buttigieg is on quote-unquote paternity leave. I thought, how do you have paternity when you don't actually have the child, okay? Adopting it. How does that get you paternity leave? And by the way, can conservatives stop calling it his husband, okay? It's not his husband. In Western civilization, men can't have husbands, okay? We have a little bit of accuracy in our use of language. So whether it's 100 supercargo ships off the coast of LA, whether it's the retreat from Afghanistan, Kabul under the control of the Taliban, this is the track record of the Democrats in just 10 months. So what are they going to do? Look at this shiny object over here. Look at our quote-unquote insurrection committee. But I think most Americans are going to see straight through it, Grant.
Not sure how he's connecting those things. I just one coming out against adoption. If you're adopted, you can't call your dad your father.
Also, coming out against. coming out against the concept of paternity, because paternity has existed and the fathers have never had the kid.
Right.
Corca said.
And I just want to list like just some of the countries that have gay marriage. I wrote these down before the show. Sweden, white people, he likes that. Australia, also that. The UK, the US, Ireland, Germany, Finland, Norway represent. Denmark, France, New Zealand, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay. Those ones, make Gorka a little bit uncomfortable, but pretty much the entire, what he would determine or call as the Western world, Western civilization, has been okay with and has legally sanctioned gay marriage and the concept of a husband and another husband for years now. So pretty sure that he is Buttigieg's husband and Buttigieg is a husband, as evidenced by the fact that he is his husband.
I actually don't think he realizes or knows that it's called something different for the mother. Because the way he said, like Matt brought up, the way he said, how could he take paternity when he didn't have the child? Well, men never have the child. And when they take time off when their child is born, it is called paternity. When it's the mother, it is called a maternity leave. Why is he trying
to erase the genders? Gorka, he's trying to conflate womanhood with paternity, with maleness.
Like there's an attempt to make the Buttigieg thing serious, in that we have issues in ports, for instance, that need addressing. But I gotta say, I do not give a crap if Buttigieg takes. I think it's probably a good example to take really long paternity leave and maybe make people who understand the Port of Los Angeles a little bit better in charge of Department of Transportation.
Well, yeah.
I really do not care that Buttigieg is not at work. I think he should be with his family, because I think that's what everybody should be doing.
I think it's interesting that you're all supporting the idea of a man holding a baby, when I think that's the ultimate sign of weakness. You will never see me photographed with a baby in my arms, because that's just the role of the women. And the moment you hold a baby, you become like a percentage point less of a man. That's just the honest truth of it. People are afraid to talk about this stuff now with the feminization of America.
Yeah, holding the baby that's the gayest thing those guys have done.
The moment it has nothing to do with being gay at all, honestly. The moment you hold a baby, like as a man, you start lactating. It's just nice try.
That's what the nipples are for. Nobody's talking about this.
No, I mean, except for, Meet the Parents. They're talking, they have that famous joke, but no one else is talking about this.
Yes. Timely Meet the Parents reference, as always, Brandon. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Shall we talk about Dave Rubin?
Oh, of course. They wouldn't be the majority report if we didn't.
At some point, it kind of feels like punching down, and we've talked about this, right? Like, I think Sam and all of you guys here, even before I joined, have so thoroughly dismantled any credibility, any shred of credibility that Rubin had that, it's just fun at this point.
Well, Joe Rogan
he's probably the only person I can think of who wasn't deplatformed and had their influence, whatever it was, completely wane to zilch, I should say.
He can no longer say, because it became so painfully obvious, I'm the last liberal, and I'm going to tell you why the Democrats and the left is so wrong. Now he's weighing in on this issue about Dave Chappelle's Netflix special, and I don't particularly care about what Chappelle really said in the context of a comedy special, but I do care about Netflix choosing to suspend one of their trans employees who had a criticism about what was said by Dave Chappelle. Dave Rubin has some commentary.
Tawe from Local says, we all knew Chappelle was going to be taken off Netflix since his first special because the woke left wants humor so sanitized. Funny is now offensive. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't even matter if you think what he's saying is funny. It actually doesn't. It's
press pause for a second.
Some people like some comedians.
How can you say we all knew Dave Chappelle would be removed after his first special and not make it and say that without ever addressing the fact that not only was it not removed, but he's gone on to have multiple more specials.
Exactly.
Partnership.
Yeah.
He's got 4 now.
Yeah.
Continue. Yeah, this is unbelievable already.
sanitized, funny is now offensive. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't even matter if you think what he's saying is funny. It actually doesn't. It's like, you know, some people like some comedians, some people like other comedians, right? Like, that's just how it is. But the point is, comedians, especially in a healthy society, a comedian must be allowed to say what they think without feeling like they're going to be destroyed after. Now, that does not mean people cannot push back. Of course, all of these employees, you're allowed as a employee to write a letter to your superior and say, you know, that actually did bother me or whatever. But right now they're protesting outside of the building. It's like Netflix, Reed Hastings, other guy, fire all these people. Just fire them and go about making the best programming you can. But these people have literally had their testicles chopped off, and they are being held by a radical trans activist outside of the Netflix building. There's some imagery for you. That probably offended somebody. Although cutting your testicles off is very in these days. That's like the new thing. That's like the thing now for these people, right?
Oh, these people. It's interesting. He gets.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Emma. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, it's just, I mean, he wants to be in with the rest of the Blaze crowd so thoroughly that he's eagerly throwing trans people under the bus, even though he, of course, himself is gay, and you can be transphobic as a gay person. I'm not saying that, but like, it just speaks to the depth of his cravenness that he's so willing to burn any bridge of progress behind him. And no one's testicles were literally chopped off. Dave, who is currently advocating for cancel culture for these Netflix employees who are expressing their opinions about what their corporation is engaging in, and wanting them to get fired. I thought that you were so outraged over these cops and other nurses, for example, the tiny number of people who resigned because they refused to get vaccinated. That was the whole right wing's latest outrage. And now, are you advocating for people to lose their jobs over expressing their opinions about their employer? Damn. Well, why do you want to silence?
Let's like move away from the hypocrisy thing of it, because this has never been about free speech for everybody. This is about liberal sort of bourgeois speech rights, which means that the speech of the workers is implicitly understood as an infringement of the speech of the boss. And so that's where we're at right now. And that's why all these people will never, of course, like, you can write a letter, but don't do anything that actually takes any more control over your workplace, because that's something that the right will not under any circumstances defend. And I think that's why, like, look, I think absolutely this, like, anti-trans stuff in media, I talked about this last night, but like, I was just rewatching X-Files, and it's a great show. Episode 12 of season 1's called Gender Bender, and like the monster of the week that week is a trans person, and a lot of these same like harmful stuff was like just like mainstream unremarkable like 30 years ago. And so like I think while I personally don't like Emma said, I'm not someone who gets up in arms about comedy, particularly when it comes with a workforce upset about the product that they're providing, whether it's Facebook or these Netflix employees. I support workers demanding more of a say over their workplace.
Yeah, that's the point. I went with the easy hypocrisy shame thing, but you're right here.
Yeah, I'd love to know where that rule is written that Dave Rubin pulled out, where workers allowed to quietly write a polite little note to their boss, not allowed to actually go outside and protest. Interesting. I wonder,
I mean, I want to
love them to forward me that.
I want to say this hits me personally very hard, because Dave Rubin is my favorite stand-up comedian. And so I think that, for me, I would love to see a Dave Rubin Netflix comedy special. I think that there's nothing I would enjoy more than like an hour of watching Dave Rubin do stand-up comedy.
You're right.
But ultimately, I mean, I've only seen like clips so far, and I just need the full unadulterated like stream of it. But from my perspective, I think that like Dave Rubin has a two-pronged appeal. The first is that he like was banished from the left for being whatever, too like liberal or too classically liberal. And the second is that he's like, the Republican or like conservative gay person who like, goes on Ben Shapiro's show and like lets him make a gay cake joke. And so, this is also to remind us that he is still there to serve that role, but his influence has waned as the IDW kind of filled that like we're all just, unorthodox thinkers trying to have a heterodox, conversation. And some of them have like doctorates, so they're just a little bit more articulate than he is. And second, that other thing that he said, I kind of feel like I'm not a big into stand-up comedy. Maybe that's why Dave Rubin's unique brand appeals to me. But this like idea that people have in their head that stand-up comedians are at the forefront of all kinds of truth telling. I was thinking about that this whole week when I was like, I don't know where that comes from other than like some George Carlin clips from like this 80, and then like people having like a idealized romantic version of like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert during the Bush administration. Because when you go on like Netflix, half the comedy specials are just Jeff Dunham doing ventriloquism. And that's all they've been for like a decade. But we still have kind of put forth this idea that like, if we're not constantly defending the comedians from the consequences or like whatever of like alienating people that might otherwise want to watch their shows because of free speech, that other people are going to suffer in some unique way who are already suffering. But I just don't think that the current demographic of comedian justifies them as any other. I mean, the current demographics of the comedian, like, stand-up comedian base who's most popular, justifies this feeling that they're just some sort of like unique truth tellers.
Right.
Honestly, like Dave Chappelle was back in the Chappelle Show was funny, but like his insight into society wasn't like, deeper than you could get from any non-comedic person.
Yeah.
People just aspire. Just too many people aspire to be funny. So they're like, oh, but if I can't be funny like this comedian, people are going to be mad at me. Then what's the point of trying to be funny? It's like, well, I mean, maybe you're not funny.
It's the conflation of the stakes, like that's going to destroy him, or it might cause some minor reputational damage, which might rebound and actually like advertise into a different audience.
I don't know if you saw the Cat Williams clip about like the idea of cancel culture and comedy when he said that like, if your entire career is like built on needing to make fun or like, alienate essentially one group of people who otherwise would watch your thing, then maybe it's not, maybe comedy is not right for you. But ultimately, I would say that maybe that's not true. Maybe comedy is right for you, but you have to be willing to take the punches as it comes from people who you're alienating. And the idea that that you're trying to cultivate a very specific, very reactionary audience just has to be what it is. And it can't be, okay, well, it's everyone's job to ensure that like someone's stand-up dreams come true, because otherwise free speech is violated. It's like, if you want, I think there was an SNL writer, like if you want to have a podcast and have that, have that kind of fun, making those kinds of very niche humor jokes that rely on like breaking taboos, they rely on there being taboos that people are going to feel strongly about. And so you can't really have it both ways where like your humor is shock, but also everyone should be unshocked when you are doing
when there's consequences. Right. Yeah.
And it's like he's not Lenny Bruce. Chappelle isn't being like booked into prison after he gets off stage, right? Like again, this is all about just, I think I have this Cat Williams clip. Is the one where he's wearing a cowboy hat. I put it in sound polls, Bradley. Maybe we could watch this one. But yeah, no, it's the 221. Sorry, I put it in after. But speaking of favorite comedians, Cat Williams is mine.
I'm not a big stand-up comedian fan. I mean, I just think that like that's the kind of thing that makes being online kind of alienating, because all anyone talks about is like stand-up comedy specials and whether they're the beginning and ending of the world. And I think that, yeah, like the popularity of any piece of media in promoting any kind of like problematic transphobic view is a problem. But then that just becomes framed against this idea that like comedians are the only thing standing between us and total like anarchy. It's just like, what?
You're right. I mean, and I'm still like what about like that kind of art? I think maybe gets people up in arms. Is it the fact that it's a singular person and there's that aspirational nature to it? Because there's plenty of art that you can like engage with and have concerns about, or I don't know, have critiques of, that doesn't inspire the same response that stand-up comedy does. I just don't. I don't care. It's not politics. It feels like some sort of cultural fight, but it's not even that.
I mean, I just don't necessarily, it doesn't appeal to me unless it's live. And so like watching stand up for me at home is not like appealing, but I think it's, you said, aspirational. A lot of people online have themselves, frame themselves as being like in some way that kind of comedian. Like, I'm going to stand up, I'm standing up on my platform or on Twitter or whatever. And so this is a battlefield that's entirely based on like, social status and social occupation and social class around like the idea of a public figure, unilateral, singular one, not being allowed to say literally everything that they want to say, whether or not it harms people, whether or not it alienates otherwise, just specifically capitalist concerns, like it alienates the workers at the place or the people who might otherwise watch it. It's more important that people be allowed to feel like, they're funny enough to one day be Dave Chappelle or something.
Yeah.
Like everyone just aspires to that.
Yeah, let's play this Cat Williams clip. It's good.
Judgment and repercussion from cancel culture.
If you ask all of the people that didn't make it to the NBA, if you ask them if we just lowered the goal down another foot, they will all tell you they'd make it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody likes the out of bounds, but the out of bounds got to be there or you'll run up in the stands, right? So some of these things are for the benefit of everything. Nobody likes the speed limit, but it's necessary. Nobody likes the shoulder of the road, but it's there for a reason. My point is, people weren't all that extremely funny back when they could say whatever they wanted to say. At the end of the day, there's no cancel culture. Cancellation doesn't have its own culture. That was people of color. That was us policing our own culture. That was people without a voice being trashed by people just because they had a bigger name than them and more money than them and a better office than them. They could sweep them up under the rug like they didn't matter. I don't know what people we think got canceled that we wish we had back. I don't even know who are they. It's done for the reasons it's done for, and it helped who it helped. If all that's going to happen is we have to be more sensitive in the way that we talk, isn't that what we want anyway? I'm saying your job as a comedian is to please the most amount of people with your art. So if you want to offend somebody, nobody took those words away from you. Dirty bitch ain't been taken away. You can say that, but don't call somebody this word when you know this affects all of these people. Don't use the R word when you really mean people on the spectrum. Don't say this word instead of saying autistic. Don't say this word instead of saying little people. Look, if these are the confines that keep you from doing the craft God put you to, then it probably ain't for you.
Your talent
That's
is
all
there
I
anyway. That's real shit. That's dope.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, it's not that hard to comprehend or even explain if you're actually like grappling with it from a from an empathetic standpoint. But I think a lot of people feel empathy for the person they feel has the most power and the largest platform in the situation. And then they go like, okay, well, I don't understand how anyone has the right to complain about what an artist is doing. Like the Emma said, it's the unilateral nature of stand-up or Joe Rogan show. But I think that comes from a very sort of like, neoliberal understanding of what it means to make yourself a brand and what yourself a business. And some people have been, conditioned to believe that when you make yourself a business, when your business is just you have a right to take on all the personal freedoms that you have. Like, Cat Williams says about, you can say whatever words you want. No one can like literally like it puts you in jail for that, but people feel like once they've made themselves a brand or business, that should, also extend to their brand and their business as well. I've said before, I think that, people act as though like once you're not allowed to say that, it's against the rules to say fire or yell fire in a crowded place unless you're trying to do it to promote your podcast or your comedy special, then it's okay. Then free speech has to be extra unregulated, because the idea that you should be making money, the idea that you should be making lots of money is just built into like what our goals in our society are is built into what we frame our society around. So to sort of chastise somebody for doing what it takes to make that kind of money, I think rubs people the wrong way.
The individualist nature really, I think, strikes a chord with me, because there's so much in, I think, this like current neoliberal climate, as you mentioned, that the only way that agency is achieved for so many people is through individual action and reaction. And so like that's how we've been conditioned essentially to express one's agency, and that's maybe why the stand-up comedy thing has a bit more salience or resonates with people a little bit more, because we are so atomized, and the way that you feel like you're making a contribution is to kind of speak for yourself in a situation and express your discontent within these like very specific capitalist confines. And so it's maybe that's what contributes to the heightened emotionalness of it.
No, I agree. I think people are very discontent, generally speaking, and stand-up comedy is a good way to feel good, you know, when you watch it. And also, like, the idea of being able to voice your discontent, like a lot of stand-up comedians do, is very appealing for people who otherwise in society have bosses, have managers, have people who are, you know, who they would like to express their discontent towards, but otherwise would not be able to, lest there be consequences. And so, you know, that being framed as some kind of like, I mean, I would frame that as a reasonable concern, but that's just about people not being taught adequately how to speak truth to power and speak truth to the powerful people in their lives. And instead just, you know, thinking, abstracting the idea that anybody who might come at a comedian for like what they view as them expressing their truth or whatever it's just, you know, is illegitimate because they should have that right. You know, it's like an aspirational right. People want to be able to tell their boss to like fuck off, but they can't.
Yeah.
Write a letter though.
Write a letter. Or get a comedy special, then you can tell them.
Yes. Dave. Rubin.
Yeah, make friends with Reed Hastings and you'll have free speech rights.
That's what he's trying to do right there to get that stand-up special, but I'll watch it, you know.
I don't think Netflix is ever going to give him one. He's just not funny.
We'll have to he's not funny on purpose.
Bite your tongue, Matt. All right, let's take another call, I think.
All right, let's go to the phones. Let's take I don't know, let's go to 920. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 920. Hello. I'm hanging up on they're gone. All right, let's go back to the phones. 504. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 504.
Hey, this is Gerald from New Orleans.
Hey, Gerald.
And I'm
from
a
New
big
Orleans.
fan. Unfortunately, I'm calling you from Louis Gohmert's district, like about 5 minutes away from his local office.
Interesting.
So the reason I'm calling is I have a theory, and I also have a couple of very mild criticisms of a couple of things that happened on the show. The first thing, my theory is that Jesse Waters watches the Majority Report.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And the reason I think that is because he heard Sam say that it's going to be trigonometry, but it's going to be black trigonometry. So now that's why he thinks math is racist, because he watches the show.
Good theory.
Now, a couple of criticisms. One, I think you guys kind of dropped the ball a little bit when you titled that clip, Matt Walsh Says He Might Be a Sociopath. I think you should have used the word admit.
Okay, we don't do the titling, but thank you. Little flag.
Okay, well, you could maybe pass that on.
That is a very
There you
mild
go.
criticism. I'll give you that.
The last thing is when at the end of most of the clips, Sam says, "There's more of what you've just saw." That makes my grammarian twitch, because it should be either what you saw or what you have seen, but not what you have saw.
Ooh.
Matt, do you want to
very relevant, poignant commentary here from New Orleans.
Oh, this is some of the most decisive critique I've ever heard of the show.
Commentary I've been exposed to.
I feel like you need to have said this though on a Sam Seder day, because this really seems to all be really thrown in his face.
I agree, but I've been trying to get on with you guys for like 3 days straight.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, you really took us to task there. So
that's what happens.
Well, there wasn't really any
of the phone call system, because I'm a man of the people, and when the people call in, I make sure they all get their voice heard.
So you're doing an awesome job. I mean, and frankly, all of you are doing an awesome job. That's why I don't really have any substantive criticism.
Well, thanks for the call. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Good to talk to you guys.
Bye.
I want to say that's the best kind of criticism. You're doing great.
Yeah.
got a little news story. Bradley, if you want to check in Sound Pulse, I got a tweet to put up here. Sarah Lazar, outrageous that AFL-CIO's national leadership is trying to prevent one of its affiliates, the San Francisco Labor Council, from even debating a resolution to support BDS. In late September, an AFL-CIO official sent a memo to the San Francisco Labor Council with the subject line, Boycott, Divest, and Sanctions Resolution. The memo obtained by The Intercept said the council may not hold a vote on the resolution, and thus any debate is not germane at your meeting, and it cited procedural stipulations that it appears to disallow local affiliates of the AFL-CIO from codifying positions that do not align with the AFL-CIO's. Copied on the letter are AFL-CIO's highest-ranking officials, president, executive VP, general counsel, and several directors. This seemed to be a big battle in this fight. And, you know, it just reminds me, like, you're just not allowed to even debate this as a matter of, like, parliamentary procedure. Reminds me of, the only example that comes to mind is how we just weren't allowed to discuss slavery in the Congress for the first, like, 50 years of this country, or for a good chunk of that. I mean, clearly just authoritarian control by the AFL-CIO here in support of anti-BDS stuff.
Yeah. And Sarah Lazar, just as an aside, like, great reporter, and everyone should follow her, specifically in this time of where there's elevated consciousness about labor and labor rights. In These Times magazine is required reading for everybody on the left. Definitely, I think. All right, let's read a few more IMs. Aaron is not cool. Chappelle is very intelligent. He's intending to offend and for a purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I made the tweet that what if one of the world's greatest all-time comedians was also like Jesse Singal. Jesse Singal was one of the greatest all-time comedians.
Let me just finish the IM. People like Rubin only see the surface level of critiques and doesn't understand that DC is actually opening himself up to create a larger message in the special. I mean, I think the way he missed the mark, he way missed the mark and is super out of touch, but to say you can't say this, you can't say that, Chappelle knows this and he likes to stick his finger in the eye of serious people. That is true. I largely agree.
But like he's done it before already on this exact same topic, which is why my patience is
he's very hung up on this topic. And
honestly, like I'm not here for J.K. Rowling defense. Like I honestly, that's why I literally can't listen to Radiohead anymore, because Radiohead defending themselves for not, boycotting Israel said, well, J.K. Rowling doesn't. And
what?
Yeah, like I mean,
what circular bullshit logic is that?
There was more citations than that. I think he might have cited like maybe Chomsky or some other few people and said like, let us do our own decisions. But the thing about J.K. Rowling, it really rankles the wrong way, because I think Rowling is not a curious person.
No.
He's basically a reactionary.
Yes. Want to talk about white feminism? Sheesh. Sorry, go on.
No, just to that point, I mean, I think that there's two things at play here. One, that people have felt, especially over the past, with the rise of online trolling and the rise of like troll culture, like infiltrating our media, that like simply saying that it's someone's intention to upset you somehow absolves them of like the responsibilities of what that like entails when people get upset, like as though, oh, you see, you fell for my trap by getting upset at the thing that I did to upset you, and therefore it's your responsibility, which, okay, I don't think that's necessarily not necessarily a good excuse, but also that like, part of being a public figure, I would argue, is being aware of the context in which you're saying these things in and how they're going to be interpreted. To like pretend as though someone's some kind of like word, like, some sort of genius wordsmith, but that they can't anticipate the kind of reactions that they're getting from, people like Dave Rubin or people who otherwise are going to view their comedy in one way. It's like Cat Williams said, it's just like, well, I mean, then perhaps you're not that good with words as you think you are. Perhaps you're not as good with the like idea of comedy and like punching down or punching up, or like, holding power to task for, being corrupt as you think you are. And really, what most people are getting out of your work is that it's, bigotry or it's bigoted. And that would be usually something that someone would reflect on. But instead, people are allowed to kind of like go, well, no, it's the children who are at fault here, AKA Principal Skinner. And I just think that that's like, what exactly is the argument here, that people should be allowed to go around upsetting other people, and if they get upset, then the person who upset them has won? Like that's just the kind of thing that people complain about on Barry Weiss's blog happening and then getting them canceled. That they purposely went out to upset people, and then like people didn't want to hang out with them, and so that's called canceling.
Aaron is not cool. To be clear, I'm not defending Chappelle. I'm saying Rubin isn't ever going to get actual criticisms because he never goes deep. Understood. Ryan from West Michigan. Sorry, I was the 920. My audio dropped out when you answered, and I thought I lost you. First time I would have gotten none. I wanted to ask about your opinions about moving MSNBC Democrats further left. I have family that's progressive BLM supporters, yet won't vote for Bernie and want to play the electability argument. Thanks. Love you all. Left is best. It's a large existential question. I would say you just have to essentially keep at it.
It would require moving MSNBC leadership left,
Yes.
which is might be harder than even moving the Democratic leadership left.
J-Bags, Bender being a Bitcoin millionaire is proof that crypto is a legitimate way to separate libertarians from their money. Todd's Hockey, Cat is also saying be low common denominator and pander, forget about merit, etc. Really?
I mean, if that, you can interpret it that way. Like, you know, there is something to be said about being edgy, being like a leader in the field of comedy. But it seems as though, like, what he was also saying is that enough people are concerned about what he was saying that they're pushing back and trying to have their voice heard. And the only response that, you know, some people are saying, you know, is that like, well, as long as some people sort of think it's okay, it's fine if the, you know, there's broad misunderstanding for what was said. And I mean, you know, like, I would say that, you know, it's not primarily his responsibility, but there has to be room to have like, okay, well, a conversation about, you know, the context in which people are saying the things that they're saying, and not just sort of absolve the person or institutions in some case of being purposely inflammatory. We see it in the news too, with like misleading headlines meant to get you to click the article. And if you get mad at the headline, it's your fault for not having the patience to sit through the entire article to see that they were just being purposely shitty and not actually.
Didn't even read the article, like 19 paragraphs.
You didn't even read the poorly written, poorly fact-checked article that says something completely different than the headline, as though, you know, you feel as though it's okay to judge people for their actions. You know, it's kind of silly.
You guys want to get to that? Maybe that's our last call of the day. Sorry, my earpiece is falling out. I might have missed the end of what Brandon said there. Is the audio working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesus. Let's all right, let's take one more call and then that'll be the final call of the day.
All right, let's go to the phones and take I don't know, let's go 818. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, what's up? Well,
Hey.
since I'm the last call of the day, I'm going to make it very quick. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Hello, Dave from Jamaica. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Hey guys, so I actually sat through the Dave Chappelle special, and to make it quick, it's lazy. That's what I think he's kind of coasting, and this is not. And I'm not a particular.
I thought that about his last one too,
or anything like that.
I thought that about his last one too.
And since I'm a straight black guy, so I'm not affected by certain things he says because I'm not the butt of the joke, but I can tell they're lazy. It's just like, and the people are saying this is fire, this is great. I think they're kind of they're not. They're just like, it's like stan culture. I think Dave Chappelle's Chappelle Show did so well that he could basically go on the stage and mumble and people would say it's great. Which he basically did. He just went on and ranted. And it wasn't particular because I'm not comparing Chappelle to past Chappelle. It was lazy. It's just I kind of find it strange how I'm not sure about the cancel culture, but I think stan culture is a real thing because I'm beginning to wonder if me and other people are watching the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it just wasn't that good. It was meh.
It is definitely
outside of the.
But Dave, wait, I have a question for you.
And this is not me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, keep going. Are you done? Just when I'll ask you when you're.
No. Go ahead.
Because it's very separate.
I'm going. Go ahead, Emma.
I thought about you the other day because I was watching Andrew Callahan's channel, the Channel 5, And did you see? So he interviewed Chet Hayes, the son of Tom Hanks, who does that.
I love that.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, and I have some bad news for you. Chet's probably his Jamaican accent is pretty good.
So I wanted to say, damn,
it's pretty good.
He said he got like a bunch of, like, he was like, it's just all these woke people who are like shitting on me about it, and I got all these messages from Jamaican people saying it's really awesome. So what are your thoughts on Chet Hayes' accent? One, you say it's good, but two, should he be doing it?
It's fine. I guess it's a different cultural thing. I guess I come from imitation is flattery. I do notice that maybe Jamaicans in America or minorities in America are a little more sensitive to that stuff. But like locally, people don't give a shit. Remember, we love down here. They love Steven Seagal reggae, and his reggae is terrible.
Wait, Steven Seagal makes reggae?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's horrible shit, but we love it.
How do you feel
They
about
love it, don't they?
Informer
Remember,
by
there was
Snow?
They love that too. They're like, lick your boom boom there. It's kind of funny. They don't. As I said, we kind of look on it like imitation is flattery type thing. But yeah, but I won't lie and say it's great, but it makes me laugh. But
Why? Tell me what you really want all night.
Who is this? Is that Steven Seagal or is that Chet?
I could immediately tell.
right,
this whole episode's about to
Don't get me wrong. We're not
stricken
saying
for
it's
that one
great
moment.
reggae or anything, but we're just laughing. It's funny.
That's amazing. All right, Dave, thank you for the call.
Nothing like to hear.
Oh yeah. No problem, guys. Catch you later.
Later.
Nothing like to hear than Steven Seagal say the word punani over reggae music.
I thought maybe he'd have like
Oh yeah, that's hilarious stuff.
his singing voice is like, it really sounds like him.
No, he didn't. Yeah. Just deliver it like it's a line, Steven.
Yeah, exactly. How'd you pull that up so quickly?
Oh, that used to be a regular fixture on TMBS actually.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Awaken Joe. Chappelle just has a chip on his shoulder because the most memorable episodes of his show were the Charlie Murphy story specials. Ooh. Direct hit. Mickey 7. Hey, MR crew. If we're going to list the countries that have legalized same-sex marriage, we should have honorable mention for the Netherlands being the first country in the world to do it in 2001. Yes, honorable mention. I just jotted down a few. I didn't mean to snub the Netherlands. Drew again. I wanted to add to my call that also poor diet and food desert affect your job because of your energy levels and what you cook for your children at the end and at the beginning of the day, since so many microwavable and processed foods are easier to prepare. Yeah, I had this conversation once with a lib friend of mine who's very healthy, and she was like, well, a banana's this price, and there's no reason. It's like I feel bad. I hope she doesn't listen to this. Like, there's no reason that, people can't eat healthier if you're poor. And it's just like, that is so disconnected from one. Say you have to work 3 jobs. It's going to be a microwavable meal. It's going to be a McDonald's, a burger. It's going to, this is how poverty compounds itself. And there's just so many different factors there. Odd homonym. Matt's X-Files comment is interesting because Duchovny played a trans person on Twin Peaks, and I think it aged really well.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
I did not know Duchovny was in it either.
Me neither.
The thing about that episode is there's certain lines in it where it's like they're almost trying to be helpful. But ultimately it goes into the most basic tired tropes about trans people.
Let's do one more. I'm sorry, I totally lost track of time. Let's do one more clip. Anybody have one in mind? The Bongino one or Ted Cruz?
Let's see. I don't know. It's up to you guys. 6 maybe. But
Why don't we just go substantive and do this Barberly Mansion one?
Okay,
let's do that.
Yeah. So, Representative Barbara Lee, who I will always contend never gets enough love for her contributions to the left in her years in Congress, she spoke with CNN's John Berman after the Senate, for the third time, blocked voting rights legislation, this time a much more watered down version because the Republicans are using and upholding the filibuster. Here she is on CNN talking about Joe Manchin and his role in this debacle.
Well, let's first of all hope that they will reconsider their position, especially for a carve-out for filibuster reform to protect our democracy, because this is what this is about. And it's a shame and disgrace that Senator Manchin negotiated with the Republicans, tried very hard, made some changes to the bill, and still not one Republican voted for it. I mean, that just shows you how they disregard our voting rights and protecting our democracy. And so,
yeah, the point is that you've got to eliminate the filibuster at the very least, which, you know, the Manchin has said he opposes any filibuster reform whatsoever, but you clobber him over the head and try to get at least a carve out for voting rights like this, because this is a and I don't want to say it's an existential question, but going into the 2022 midterms, if the Democrats don't address voting on a national scale whatsoever, it's in for a bloodbath. And I'm not, cheerleading the blue donkey or whatever here, but the reality is that on the state level, Republicans control 2/3 essentially of state houses throughout the country, something to that effect. They've made significant gains. They've gerrymandered the hell out of things, and they are rigging the rules in their favor regularly. And the reason that they're able to do that is because on the national level, Senate Democrats are more committed to having a voluntary handcuff on policy when they're in the majority, which will be instances that are fewer and far between as this inaction persists, because they don't actually want to deliver for people, and the filibuster is a wonderful, wonderful, convenient way for them to get around doing anything that's more structural. And that's really how you have to look at it. And Manchin is the number one person in that area, but there are a lot of quieter people behind the scenes who love the filibuster, like Mark Warner in Virginia, for example, who serves corporations entirely.
And who aren't worried about, frankly, less and less people being able to vote, because they probably feel safe with their sort of suburban constituencies that their folks are going to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be maybe the voters from the parts of town that they don't do so well, poor parts of town, that are going to be the ones that are disenfranchised. So that's why, we have a situation where the entirety of the Republican Party and a crypto anti-democratic sliver of the Democrats, figureheaded by Sinema and Manchin now, don't want to do anything about it because, like we said, they don't actually care.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because the Democrats are so short-sighted and they still just see a flashing red light or green light for that matter of a fundraising ability with these suburban types, they're going to keep chasing and are transforming the party apparatus to appeal to some of those more suburban types in a way that runs contrary to a lot of what we're seeing with the labor movement resurging. They are prioritizing short-term gains with those kinds of voters because that delivered Biden to the White House because they hated Trump. That is not sustainable, and you're not going to be able to out-organize it, as some Democrats have suggested. This is a huge, massive problem that, the Republicans will block any voting rights bill that they come up with. It's a pipe dream to suggest otherwise. Reform the filibuster now, and then hopefully we can hold on to the whatever is left of this dying republic.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna do voting rights, and I don't really care. Like, I think it would help Democrats, but like,
it's also just voting rights.
Yeah, it's that we're like even technocratically questioning whether it's worth the effort is, I think, a horrible sign.
Yeah, and again, like we cite this all the time, but there are 50 Democratic senators right now, and then there are 50 Republican senators, and the 50 Democrats represent 40 million more people than the 50 Republican senators. And even when they're in the majority with Harris as the tiebreaker, they can't do anything because they choose not to do anything because they would rather be esteemed stewards of this sinking Titanic that is the United States and feel really high on themselves because they're committed to the process and they listen to the parliamentarian rather than actually help people's lives. The Senate is an undemocratic institution. It gets more undemocratic by the day, and the filibuster is a prime example of that because they're literally using it as an excuse to stand in the way of expanding democratic access in a shrinking democratic system with voter rights here.
Also, one thing just to throw out there, like, I think that, like, I think it might, like you say, Emma, lead to a bloodbath, but I worry that, like, they might actually still be able to win like this. Like, friends, like, it won't just lead to a Republican, like, permanent majority. It'll lead to what we have now, which is like a back and forth close elections, but just enough, but made of the type of Democratic voters that they want. So when they do win, it's a suburban type of thing. So, like, I'm actually worried that, like, they're like, it's just like trimming the fat, but they might, like, Biden won without doing anything really for the left in that whole primary. He's like, we don't need you. And everyone was saying, oh crap, you're going to lose to Trump that way. And he beat Trump. And so I don't know. I'm like concerned that they took the lesson from that. Like, oh, we don't need these people. That's why we're not going to fight for voting rights. And so, like, I think, like, I don't know where that puts us, except, like, they're not going to be the ones to fight for it unless they're forced.
It doesn't put us in a good situation.
But that doesn't really make sense, though, from that, even their point of view, though, because their assumption is that the left is not as diverse, and so voting rights would affect what basically would be Biden's base, that actually helped him win. The ones that were fairly enthusiastic for Biden, older establishment Dems.
Don't you think?
What's that?
Those are the people that turn out all the time, whereas, like, new people included in the system, like people that are always going to vote are always going to vote. Like, and they're not going to be disenfranchised out. I think it's like the Republicans vote suppressed because it's the people who might only vote once out of every, like, 5 times or something like that.
I'm sure those people are affected for sure, mostly, but I definitely think there are people every year who probably are regular voters and suddenly can't vote due to various, voter laws or voter ID issues. So I don't know what their calculation is there, but I don't think it's, speaking of Biden and the Dems, but I don't think it's that, honestly. Also, I don't think he's been as, obviously with some issues, but speaking about what's going on right now, I don't think he's been as hostile. The reason, obviously it's a much lower package, but, Bernie's been pretty much the face of this. And, if Biden didn't want that, he could certainly do something about it. No?
I think the Democrats are doing what they've been doing since, I can remember, which is chasing a mythical suburban mom voter that, sometimes might vote for Democrats, sometimes might vote for Republicans, but is largely willing to vote based on what they view as propriety. Right. And effort, in an attempt to construct a semblance of a 2-party system within their own party as well. So, like, once the election is over, Republicans are just like non-starters on any issue. They'll tell you that. And so we just have to have this pretend, like, back and forth debate between members of the Democratic Party, in the absence of Republicans being any real legislative or rather having any real interest in true legislation. And so I think, I kind of agree with Matt that we're going to continue to go down this road. Maybe they don't hold the majority because of gerrymandering and trying to appeal to a mythical center and, to exclusion of labor or people of color who are losing voting rights. But ultimately, the party they're going to construct is going to be, the party of landlords in the party of tenants, or at least some landlords, woke landlords in tenants, and they're going to be trying to be the intermediaries between those two groups, while also pretending as though they're able to fight the Republican Party on the sort of back end.
All right, we're gonna read a few more IMs and then we're gonna get out of there. Bradley's daddy wrote in, "Can the gang please rethink your Bitcoin position? I promise it's the future and I want the left to begin accepting it before it's too late." No.
Oh boy.
God, give me
what is it the future of? I don't understand. What is it the future of? Like, explain this, because everyone who I ever get into an argument with who claims they're on the left and they're big supporters of crypto, and we need to all get into it, I ask them, why do you like it so much? And the answer is always because I, the individual, made a lot of money off of it. That's great. There's a lot of things out there you can make a lot of money off of. And I understand that crypto is the thing for, people of a certain generation that does possibly have more interest in leftist ideals. That's great. Doesn't mean it's good or the future. What does that mean? What does that mean? There's always something new, some new business proposition or money-making endeavor that comes along for every generation. What does it being the future and helping the left mean? It doesn't mean anything because there's nothing there.
I agree that enriching me would definitely help the left.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but that is exactly the thing, though. Like, there's this guy who always replies to me, and I see replies to you guys too, where he's always on Twitter, and he's just always like, "Oh, if I listened to you guys, I wouldn't have made all this money. Why do you guys shit on the?" That's great that you made all this money. That's great. There's a lot of things you could do to make a lot of money. Start get a big tech startup, make a big tech. You could have invested in Apple or Microsoft back in the day. Like, there's tons of different ways like that. None of that shit is beneficial to society as a whole. I'm sorry. Like, it is what it is.
Not Bitcoin, not Ethereum, not any of this shit, which is basically like the upside when you say, like, what's the use case? Because I get in this too a lot with people, and they're like, you're going to look so dumb in a few years. And I say, like, well, what is going to happen in a few years? And it's like, we're going to be able to money launder for leftist causes. Like, no, we're fucking not. We're not going to be able to do that.
I mean, I think that, like, just that language portrays what's going on. Like, you don't want to feel stupid, you want to feel smart. And I think that being involved in this sort of, like, pseudo high-tech world of NFTs and crypto helps people who otherwise, the most difficult thing they do with their computer is helping their grandma remove the malware or something. It lets them feel like, they're operating in the next world of, like, virtual tech billionaires. And the reality, it's like, it's a grift. It's a grift that people are playing on that particular population of Zoomers and millennials who view themselves to be tech savvy because they know how VPNs work, when 99 or 90% of people, whatever, don't know how VPNs work properly. And that's just, that's a rife market to tap into, because it's a very tech, very sort of like, Reddit heavy crowd of people who are ready for, to believe something is going to be the future and they're going to look smarter than someone else.
And those arguments always come when Bitcoin or whatever the crypto everyone's talking about at the moment, Dogecoin, starts, pumping. And I've never ever, and you'll never find this in my Twitter, on any of my videos I've done on crypto, you will never find me speculate about price points or it failing or it going up, because you know what? None of that matters.
Exactly.
None of that affects the critiques of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a whole. It could hit 100,000, it could hit 200,000. People who got in 10 years ago and got lucky could be all billionaires tomorrow because it goes so high. None of it affects any of the critiques that I have made, that Matt Leck I've heard has made, that everyone else on the majority report or on the left has made about it. It does not affect it at all, because the critique of crypto is not tied to the how big the rich people who hold all the crypto have decided to pump it. It just doesn't matter.
All right, I'm gonna read three more IMs.
I just want to make two. Yeah. Sorry, but like they say this, like it's internet. Like the internet was revolutionized human communications. Accounting is not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just there's not the same upside. And then they'll say like it's gonna destroy the big banks. And also look at Goldman Sachs uses it. And it's like these things are fucking contradictory. Oh, I'm against dictatorial fiat currency, but also the El Salvadoran president said it's money now. Like like it's completely contradictory bullshit. And what its ultimate aim is just to inflate the price, because it's a speculative asset and it will never be anything more than that.
Between the 1 and the 5, he's just a jag-off comedian, I would imagine, referring to Dave Rubin. Riot Girl, not that the Gorkhas of the world would care, but the term family leave is helpful because it covers all genders and family-related reasons for time off in one fell swoop. And the final I am of the day, Evelino Gracias. I got dumped a couple days ago. True cancel culture. I'm sorry to hear that. All right, folks. Wonderful show today. Thank you all for your contributions and your thoughts and your funny jokes. Jesus, I suck at closing this.
Watch my stream tonight, youtube.com/MattBinder.
Watch that. And the Discourse and last night's Left Reckoning and more. And the Nomi Key Show. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.